What if being born with all the money in the world wasn't a ticket to freedom, but a life sentence in a beautiful prison? We're taught to believe that wealth solves every problem, but the truth is, sometimes it's the very thing that chains you down. This is a story for anyone who has ever felt trapped by expectations, forced to wear a mask while their heart screams for something real. It's a story that proves that the most powerful currency in the world isn't the dollar, but courage. Get ready, because we're about to show you how a billionaire heiress who was forced to marry a tycoon did the unthinkable. She ran away with her true love, a poor teacher. Meet Claire Jenkins, an heiress to an unimaginable fortune, living a life that most people can only dream of. But behind the gates of her lavish mansion, she is suffocating. Her future sold in a business deal to a ruthless, powerful tycoon who sees her as nothing more than a prize. And then there's Jerry Evans, a compassionate but poor teacher, a man who possesses none of Claire's wealth, but holds the one thing she desperately needs, the key to her heart. Their love is a dangerous secret, a flickering flame in a world of cold, hard transactions. This story is about the explosive moment their two worlds collide. We're going to follow their incredible journey, a roller coaster of secret meetings, impossible choices, and heart-stopping risks. How can a woman who has everything give it all up for a man who has nothing? Can a pure and simple love truly stand a chance against the combined forces of immense wealth and family betrayal? This isn't just a love story, it's a story of rebellion, of choosing your own destiny, and of one woman's breathtaking escape from a golden cage. The story of how a billionaire heiress ran away with her true love, a poor teacher, is one you won't soon forget. Now, before we dive into this incredible story, we want to feel just how far this tale of love and courage has traveled. Please drop a comment below and tell us what beautiful city or town you're watching from right now. We want to imagine the scenery with you. And if you believe in the power of true love, do us a huge favor, hit that like button. Make sure you're following the channel so you don't miss what happens next. And share this video with one person you know who needs a reminder that the best things in life can't be bought. You know, destiny has a funny and often cruel way of cornering us. For the young heiress Claire Jenkins, that moment didn't come as a choice, but as a cold, calculated sentence. Picture this: oak-paneled walls, the scent of expensive cigars and old money, and a silence so heavy it could crush a soul. It was there that her family patriarch, with a predator's gaze, sealed her fate. A fate that, to him, was just another business transaction, a move to save their empire from a rival tycoon. It was a truly devastating, emotional moment for her. The word marriage was uttered with the same chill as a contractual clause, completely devoid of warmth or affection. To Claire, it sounded like the screech of a golden cage locking shut around her. This wasn't about partnership or love, it was a forced marriage, a strategic alliance where she was the primary asset being traded. That man, a ruthless tycoon infamous for his merciless business tactics, didn't see a bride, he saw an acquisition. A final link to consolidate his power. Oh, the bitter irony of being a billionaire heiress with absolutely no power over your own life. Her entire existence, which once felt like an ocean of possibilities, suddenly narrowed to a single grim duty. Silent tears streamed down her face as she gazed out of her mansion window, looking at a world that no longer truly belonged to her. The feeling was a profound sadness that clung to her very being, whispering that her dreams and desires had just been sacrificed on the altar of corporate greed. She was to marry a man she didn't love to save a legacy she never really wanted in the first place. The conversation, if you could even call it that, was short and brutal. There was no room for protest, no space for pleas. The decision had been made. Her father, the very man who was supposed to protect her, handed her over like a prize. The tycoon, with his calculating smirk, already viewed her as another beautiful possession, a trophy to be displayed in his vast collection of successes. For all intents and purposes, Claire Jenkins's life as a free woman had ended right there. In that smoke-filled room, night fell over the city like a shroud, but for Claire, the darkness was all inside. Every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall was one less beat in her countdown to a life of misery. She felt utterly alone, a pawn in a high-stakes chess game played by heartless men. The concept of destiny felt like a sick joke, one told. Entirely at her expense, and she couldn't find an ounce of humor in it. This was just the beginning of a long, painful story. And yet, even in the deepest pits of despair, a tiny spark of rebellion can survive, hidden and fragile. While the world prepared to celebrate the union of two powerful families, they hadn't the slightest idea that in the quiet of her heart, a secret flame refused to be extinguished. A secret that held the key to her true self and just maybe, her only chance at salvation. Something that all the money in the world couldn't buy or control. Life in the gilded cage was exactly as one might expect, suffocatingly beautiful. Every day was a performance for Claire Jenkins, a carefully choreographed dance of polite smiles and empty pleasantries. She was surrounded by opulence but starved of genuine connection, a lonely princess in a marble tower. The billionaire lifestyle was a hollow shell, its sheen doing nothing to warm the cold ache in her heart. Her only escape, her only taste of real life, was found in the stolen moments she spent with a man who was the world's opposite of her fiancé. A man who was a simple, poor teacher. His name was Jerry Evans, and he was her secret. He didn't see an heiress, he saw Claire. He didn't care about her family's empire. He cared about the worries that creased her brow. Their meetings were clandestine, held in quiet coffee shops on the other side of town, or in the hushed aisles of a dusty old bookstore. It was in these simple places that Claire could finally breathe, shedding the weight of her forced marriage, and just being herself. This connection felt like true love, a force so pure it defied her complicated reality. Jerry Evans represented everything her world wasn't: kindness, integrity, and a wealth of spirit that no tycoon could ever amass. He spoke of his students with a passion that lit up his eyes, of the small victories in his underfunded classroom. He was a poor teacher by society's standards, yes, but he was rich in purpose. For Claire, listening to him was like drinking cool water after wandering in a desert of superficiality. Their bond was the most precious, emotional secret she had ever kept. This secret relationship became her lifeline, the anchor that kept her from being swept away by the currents of her family's ambition. Jerry's simple wisdom and unwavering compassion were her solace. He couldn't offer her diamonds or a financial empire, but he offered her something far more valuable: a safe harbor for her heart. Their hidden love story was a quiet rebellion against the gilded prison she was forced to inhabit, a testament to the idea that love doesn't care about bank accounts. Of course, the fear of being discovered was a constant shadow lurking in the background. The risk was immense, not just for her, but for him. She knew her family, and especially her ruthless fiancé, would not hesitate to crush a poor teacher who dared to stand in their way. This ever-present danger added a layer of desperation to their stolen moments, making every shared laugh and gentle touch both precious and terrifying. It was a dangerous game they were playing, but how could she stop? Jerry was the only one who saw the real Claire, the intelligent, passionate woman hidden beneath the heiress facade. He was the keeper of her deepest secret, the one person who knew her not as a Jenkins, but as a soul yearning for freedom. And as she navigated her lonely days, the thought of him was the one thing that made her feel that overcoming this nightmare might actually be possible, even if she couldn't yet see how. The man Claire was forced to marry, a tycoon of formidable reputation, moved through the world as if he owned it because, in many ways, he did. He saw life as a series of transactions and acquisitions, and Claire Jenkins was simply his latest and most beautiful one. He paraded her at galas and high society events, his arm possessively around her waist, a symbol of his ever-expanding empire. To him, she wasn't a partner, she was a masterpiece to be displayed, a testament to his power. Her own thoughts were of no concern to him. He never once asked about her day, her passions, or the books she loved to read. He'd compliment her dress, the diamonds around her neck, things he had bought, but never the spark of intelligence in her eyes. Claire, an heiress educated at the finest schools with a brilliant mind for strategy, was treated as little more than a decorative object. Her sharp intellect was completely ignored, an irrelevant feature of the product he had acquired. It was a deeply emotional and isolating experience for her. During dinners with other powerful men, he would speak about her but never to her. "Isn't she stunning?" He'd boom, as if she were a prized racehorse. He'd cut her off if she dared to offer an opinion on business or politics, patting her hand with a dismissive smile that said, "Leave this to the men." This wasn't just neglect, it was a deliberate erasure of her identity, a constant reminder that in his world, her only value was ornamental. He was marrying a billionaire, but he was blind to her true worth. This treatment solidified the grim reality of her forced marriage. It wasn't going to be a partnership of any kind, it was a life sentence of being seen but not heard. The tycoon's world was built on dominance and control, and he had no interest in a wife with a mind of her own. The loneliness she felt in her golden cage deepened with every passing day. Every dismissive gesture, every empty compliment that ignored the vibrant woman trapped inside the beautiful facade. It felt like a slow, painful death of her spirit. She often found herself mentally escaping to her secret moments with Jerry Evans, the poor teacher who listened to her ideas with genuine fascination. He was the only one who challenged her, debated with her, and saw the fire in her mind as her greatest asset, not an inconvenience. The contrast was staggering and painful. One man saw a beautiful doll, the other saw a brilliant partner. This stark difference made her clandestine love story feel less like an affair and more like a fight for survival. The tycoon was so consumed by his own ego that he never once suspected her detachment. He mistook her quietness for compliance, her sad smiles for contentment. He had no idea that behind her serene mask, a storm was brewing. He was too busy admiring his acquisition to notice that its heart and mind belonged to someone else entirely, and that a plan to run away from this hollow existence was slowly but surely beginning to form in her brilliant, overlooked mind. The breaking point finally came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Claire, feeling the walls of her forced marriage closing in, couldn't bear the hypocrisy any longer. With a surge of desperate courage, she confronted her father in his study, the same room where her fate had been sealed. She confessed everything: her misery, her suffocation, and the one thing that gave her hope, her true love for Jerry Evans, the poor teacher. She pleaded with him, woman to man, daughter to father, to call off the wedding. Her father listened, his face an unreadable mask of stone. He didn't yell. He didn't rage. He did something far worse. When she finished, her voice trembling with raw, emotional honesty, he simply took a sip of his scotch and looked at her with cold pity. He told her that her feelings were a childish indulgence the family could not afford. He spoke of legacy, of duty, and of the power the tycoon held over their entire financial future. Love, he explained, was a luxury for the common folk. Then came the threat, delivered with the casual cruelty of a man accustomed to getting his way. This Jerry Evans, he began, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. A teacher, you say? It would be a shame if a man in his position were to be embroiled in a scandal. False accusations, perhaps, a destroyed reputation, fired from his job. The words hung in the air, a venomous promise. He made it clear that if she didn't walk down that aisle, he would personally ensure that the poor teacher's life was utterly and completely ruined. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't just a threat against her, it was a weapon aimed directly at the heart of the innocent man she loved. Her father, a billionaire who could pull strings she couldn't even Imagine would crush Jerry without a second thought. He would turn Jerry's life into a living nightmare, all to secure a business deal. She was trapped. Obey, and she sentences herself to a life of misery. Defy him, and she sentences the man she loves to utter destruction. Her secret was no longer a beautiful escape, it was now a terrible liability, a vulnerability her father was more than willing to exploit. The thought of Ernest Jerry being destroyed by her family's machinations was unbearable. It was a cruel checkmate. Her father knew she would never let an innocent person suffer for her. He was using her own compassion, the very quality that Jerry admired in her, as a tool to control her. This was the true nature of the world she was born into. So she stood there, defeated, the fight draining out of her. The hope of overcoming her circumstances seemed to vanish in the cold, hard reality of her father's threat. She had confessed her love, hoping for a sliver of understanding, but all she found was a new, more terrifying dimension to her cage. Now, her compliance wasn't just about saving an empire. It was about protecting the poor teacher she loved from the ruthless world of the tycoon and the heiress. Her destiny seemed sealed once again. Jerry Evans was beginning to feel the immense weight of their different worlds pressing down on him. One evening, he attended a university fundraising gala not as a guest, but working a side job with the catering staff to make ends meet. It was a world of shimmering gowns and easy laughter, a universe away from his own. And it was there that he saw him, the tycoon, Claire's fiancé, holding court. Jerry's heart clenched as he watched the man, a perfect picture of arrogance and power, so different from the humble poor teacher. The moment that truly shook him came when a young scholarship student, nervous and overwhelmed, accidentally spilled a drink near the tycoon's table. The magnate's reaction was swift and brutal. He didn't just get angry, he was cruel. He publicly humiliated the girl, mocking her clumsiness and making a snide remark about how some people just don't belong in such places. The student fled in tears, and Jerry felt a hot surge of protective anger. How could the woman he loved be tied to a man like this? He watched Claire, who was standing beside her fiancé, her face a carefully composed mask of neutrality. Jerry's heart sank a little. He saw her smile politely and nod, playing the part of the supportive fiancé. For a moment, he feared she was truly one of them, desensitized to the casual cruelty of the elite. The sight was a painful, emotional blow, making him question everything he thought he knew about their love story and her ability to exist in two such different worlds. But then, something happened that changed everything. Later that evening, Jerry saw Claire slip away from the party. His curiosity piqued. He followed at a discreet distance. He watched as she found the crying student sitting alone on a bench. In the gardens, Claire didn't announce herself as a billionaire heiress. She approached her gently as an equal and offered a handkerchief and words of quiet comfort. She spoke to the girl about her studies, about her dreams, and about not letting arrogant fools dim her light. Before leaving, Claire discreetly slipped a card into the student's bag. Jerry, moving closer after she left, saw the girl find it later. It was the contact information for a prestigious academic grant foundation, with a handwritten note that said, "Your future is brighter than they are. Don't ever forget it." It was an act of pure, anonymous kindness, a surprise that revealed the true heart of the woman he loved. She was secretly using her power for good, a quiet act of defiance. Jerry was overcome. He had witnessed the monster she was forced to marry, and in the same night, the angel she truly was. This secret act of compassion was a testament to her character, showing that the heiress hadn't been corrupted by the world she lived in. It was a profound moment of realization, a small plot twist in his perception of her situation. He saw her struggle, her quiet rebellion, and her deep-seated goodness. His love for her deepened, but so did his worry about the life she was trapped in. Despite witnessing Claire's secret kindness, the seed of doubt had been planted in Jerry's mind. That night at the gala was a stark reminder of the chasm between them. He was a poor teacher who counted every dollar, while she was a billionaire heiress who lived in a world where money was an abstract concept. He saw the way people deferred to her, the casual power she wielded without even trying. The sheer scale of the wealth surrounding her was dizzying, an insurmountable wall that seemed to grow higher every time he saw her. He started to notice it everywhere. The casual mention of a weekend trip to Paris, the effortless way she navigated conversations with senators and CEOs. These things weren't meant to be intimidating, but they were. They highlighted the fundamental differences in their lives, their experiences, their realities. He began to feel like an imposter in her life, a visitor from another planet. Could true love really be enough to bridge such a vast and complicated gap? The thought was a constant, nagging ache. The life of a tycoon was what she was destined for, what her world expected of her. How could his simple life ever compare? He could offer her honesty, affection, a shared love of old books and quiet evenings, but her fiancé could offer her the world. Jerry started to feel a profound sense of inadequacy, a feeling he had never experienced before. He wasn't just a poor teacher anymore. He was the poor teacher trying to love a woman who was promised to a king. It was a deeply emotional struggle. He began to pull back just slightly. A missed call here, a shorter text there. He was terrified. Terrified that he was holding her back, that he was a complication she didn't need in her already impossible life. What if his love was selfish? What if, by encouraging her to dream of a life with him, he was actually setting her up for a fall, for a life of struggle she was completely unprepared for? The weight of this responsibility felt immense, and it was starting to crush his spirit. Their secret meeting started to feel less like a joyful escape and more like a painful reminder of what they couldn't have. He'd look at her, this incredible woman who deserved all the happiness in the world, and feel a pang of guilt. Was he just a childish dream she was clinging to before accepting her inevitable destiny? The world of the billionaire and the world of the poor teacher seemed to be on a collision course, and he feared their love story would be the first casualty. He was caught in a spiral of self-doubt. He loved Claire Jenkins with every fiber of his being, but love, he was beginning to fear, wasn't a fairy tale. It had to survive in the real world, a world full of power, money, and expectations. And as he looked at the chasm between their lives, he couldn't shake the terrifying thought that maybe, just maybe, their worlds were simply too different for a love like theirs to ever truly survive. The tycoon, ever the master of public relations, decided their engagement needed a boost in the society pages. He arranged a high-profile charity event which was in reality more about networking than charity, and orchestrated a massive photo opportunity. He needed the world to see the perfect power couple, the ruthless billionaire and his beautiful heiress. He pulled Claire to his side, his hand gripping her arm a little too tightly, and commanded her to smile for the cameras. It was a performance. Pure and simple, Claire did as she was told. On the outside, she was the picture of grace and happiness. Her smile was bright, practiced, and utterly fake. Inside, she felt like a puppet, her strings being pulled by the cold, ambitious man beside her. Each flash of the camera felt like a small betrayal of her true love for Jerry, a reinforcement of the lie she was being forced to live. She was playing a role, trying to survive, trying to protect the poor teacher she loved from the wrath of her family. Unfortunately, Jerry Evans saw none of the nuance. He only saw the image that was blasted across every news site and society blog the next morning. There was Claire, his Claire, smiling radiantly at the tycoon's side. She was dressed in a breathtaking gown, dripping with diamonds, looking every bit the part of the happy billionaire heiress. The caption read, "A match made in heaven, power and beauty unite." To Jerry, who was nursing his own deep-seated insecurities, the picture was a dagger to the heart. He didn't see the coercion. He didn't see the fear behind her eyes. He saw a woman who looked like she belonged in that world. He saw her smiling at the man who could give her everything he couldn't. His fear and doubt crystallized into a single, painful conclusion: she had made her choice. She had chosen the lavish lifestyle, the power, the security. She had chosen the tycoon. The emotional pain of this perceived betrayal was sharp and overwhelming, clouding his judgment completely. It was the ultimate confirmation of his deepest fear: their worlds were too different. He, the poor teacher, had been a fool to think he could compete. He had been a temporary diversion, a romantic fantasy before she returned to her real life. The secret love story that had been his entire world now felt like a naive dream he had foolishly believed in. He felt used, discarded, and utterly heartbroken. This wasn't a plot twist in his mind, it was the inevitable tragic ending. Blinded by his pain and insecurity, Jerry misinterpreted the entire situation. He saw the photo not as a cry for help, but as a declaration of allegiance. He felt a surge of anger and betrayal that eclipsed all the tender moments they had shared. He couldn't see that her smile was a mask, a shield she was using to protect him. All he could see was the woman he loved seemingly embracing the very destiny he had hoped they could escape together. Fueled by a toxic mix of heartbreak and wounded pride, Jerry arranged to meet Claire at one of their secret spots, a small, quiet park. But this time, there was no warmth in his greeting, no tenderness in his eyes. The air between them was thick with tension. Before Claire could even explain the suffocating reality of the fatoop, Jerry launched his attack. His voice, usually so gentle, was now laced with a bitterness she had never heard before. The confrontation was brutally emotional. "I saw the pictures," he said, his words clipped and cold. "You looked happy. You looked like you belonged." He gestured vaguely, as if encompassing the entire world of wealth she inhabited. "I get it, Claire. I really do. How can a poor teacher possibly compete with a tycoon? What can I offer you? A cramped apartment and a mountain of student papers to grade. It's no contest, is it?" Each word was a blow, twisting the knife of his own insecurity and aiming it straight at her heart. Claire tried to interject, to explain the coercion, the threat against him, the hollowness of it all. She tried to tell him that her heart belonged only to him, that her smile was a lie. But Jerry was too lost in his own pain to listen. "Don't," he said, holding up a hand. "I'm not a fool. I see how it is. You're a billionaire heiress, and he's a billionaire. It's a perfect match. It's your destiny." He spat the word out like it was poison. He told her he was letting her go, that he was ending their love story for good. He framed it as a noble act, saying she deserved the life she was born into. But the accusation was clear. He believed she had chosen wealth over their true love. "A poor teacher has no place in your world," he concluded, his voice finally breaking. "I can't be a dirty little secret you keep while you live your real life. It's over." The finality in his tone was absolute, leaving no room for argument. For Claire, this was the ultimate betrayal. The one person she thought understood her, the one person she was trying to protect, was now accusing her of the very thing she despised. It was a devastating surprise, a plot twist she never saw coming. Her heart, already bruised and battered by her family and fiancé, now felt completely shattered. The one pillar of strength in her life had just crumbled into dust, and the loneliness was absolute. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone amongst the trees, the echo of his words ringing in her ears. He didn't look back. Jerry Evans, the man who was her only solace, had just broken her heart far more completely than her forced marriage ever could. He hadn't just ended their relationship, he had invalidated it, reducing their profound connection to a simple matter of money and status. She was truly, utterly alone now. The days following Jerry's heartbroken departure were a blur of exquisite pain for Claire Jenkins. She was a ghost in her own life, moving through the motions of planning a wedding she dreaded, her spirit crushed. The emotional turmoil was immense. Yet, amidst the wreckage of her shattered heart, something else began to take root as steely resolve. Jerry had accused her of choosing a life of shallow wealth, and she would prove him wrong. Not for him, but for herself. She needed an act of redemption. She had access to a personal trust fund, a separate inheritance from her grandmother, who had always encouraged her independent spirit. It was a significant sum, even by billionaire standards. While her family's main fortune was tied up in the empire, this money was hers alone. An idea sparked in her mind a way to channel her pain into something good, something meaningful. It was a way to honor the values that Jerry, the poor teacher, had taught her to cherish. Claire began her research, working in secret, late into the night. She delved into the public school system, uncovering the shocking lack of resources at the very school where Jerry worked. She saw the pleas for basic supplies, the outdated textbooks, the overcrowded classrooms. The contrast between her opulent world and the daily struggles of these teachers and students was obscene. She knew what she had to do. This was her chance for a quiet act of defiance against the tycoon and everything he represented. Working through a team of lawyers and a newly created charitable foundation to ensure her anonymity, she made the single largest donation the school had ever seen. It was a transformative gift, enough to fund a new science lab, a library full of new books, laptops for every student, and a significant raise for all the teachers. She made sure the grant was unrestricted, empowering the educators powering Jerry to use it as they saw fit. It was a gesture of true love, even if you would never know it came from her. She felt a flicker of her old self returning, a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. This was a different kind of power, not the oppressive power of a tycoon, but the power to create opportunity, to lift people up. As the heiress to a fortune, this was the first time she had used her money in a way that truly resonated with her soul. It was an act of overcoming her own despair by focusing on the well-being of others. The news of the miracle donation spread like wildfire, a beacon of hope for the struggling school district. Claire watched the story on a small television in her room, her heart aching with a strange mix of sadness and pride. She saw the joy on the faces of the teachers and students, and it was a balm to her wounded spirit. She had lost her love story, but she had found a new way to keep its spirit alive, even if it had to remain her most guarded secret. The anonymous donation transformed Jerry's school overnight. Morale soared. For the first time, he and his fellow teachers felt seen and valued. As a poor teacher, he was used to fighting for scraps, so this sudden influx of resources felt like a miracle. He threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, leading the committee to allocate the funds. He was filled with gratitude for the mysterious benefactor, a person he imagined to be a kind-hearted philanthropist, a stark contrast to the greedy tycoon types he despised. One day, while working with the school's administration to finalize the grant paperwork, Jerry noticed something odd. The donation was funneled through a newly established foundation, and the lawyer on record was a name he vaguely recognized. Had seen the man in the background of a few society photos of Claire's family. A small, nagging suspicion began to form in the back of his mind. It was a crazy thought, a wild coincidence, but it refused to go away. It felt like a plot twist waiting to happen. Driven by a strange compulsion, Jerry started digging. He spent his nights researching the foundation, tracing its origins, looking for any clue about its founder. It was a difficult task, as everything was meticulously designed to be anonymous. But then he found a small incorporation document, filed months ago, with a single signatory on a preliminary form. The signature was elegant, familiar, and unmistakable. It was Claire Jenkins. The surprise hit him like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. The shame that washed over him was immediate and all-consuming. He had accused her of being shallow, of choosing money, of being just another heartless billionaire heiress. He had thrown her love back in her face, convinced that a poor teacher like him was nothing more than a temporary distraction. And all the while, she had been performing this quiet, profound act of generosity, not for recognition, but for the good of others, for the good of his world. He realized with sickening clarity that her heart was purer than anyone he had ever known, especially those in her wealthy circle. She wasn't corrupted by her money, she was trapped by it, and she was using the only power. She had to make a real difference. Her secret wasn't a betrayal, it was an act of profound love and grace. This was the ultimate redemption, but it was her character being redeemed in his eyes, not the other way around. The emotional weight of his mistake was crushing. He thought back to his cruel words, his bitter accusations. He had let his own insecurities and prejudices blind him to the truth. He hadn't just misunderstood a situation, he had failed the woman he loved in her moment of greatest need. He had broken her heart for no reason other than his own foolish pride. The true love story he had so carelessly thrown away was real, and he was the one who had destroyed it. He had to find her. He had to make it right. Finding Claire wasn't easy. She was now under constant watch as her wedding to the tycoon loomed closer, but Jerry Evans was determined. He used his knowledge of the city, the side streets and quiet corners a billionaire would never know though. Finally intercept her on her way to a dress fitting. When she saw him, her eyes widened with a mix of shock, pain, and a flicker of the love she had tried so hard to bury. The encounter was charged, intensely emotional. He didn't waste time with excuses. He simply stood before her, his heart in his eyes, and begged for her forgiveness. He told her he knew about the school, about her secret, selfless act. "I was a fool, Claire," he said, his voice thick with shame. "I let my pride and my fear make me blind. I accused you of being the one thing you're not. Can you ever forgive me?" He confessed his love, his stupidity, and his unwavering belief in her goodness. This was his moment of redemption. Tears welled in Claire's eyes, tears of relief, of sorrow for the time they had lost, and of hope. Seeing his genuine remorse, his raw vulnerability, melted the ice that had formed around her heart. She forgave him. In that moment, standing on a busy city street, their love story was reignited, stronger and more determined than ever. They knew they couldn't go back. The forced marriage was no longer an option. They had to fight for their true love. That's when the idea was born. It was crazy, reckless, and incredibly dangerous. They decided they would run away, together, on her wedding day. It was the ultimate defiance, a plan worthy of a dramatic plot twist. They would turn the tycoon's grand spectacle into their moment of liberation. They huddled together, speaking in hushed tones, creating a secret plan. Jerry, the humble poor teacher, and Claire, the brilliant heiress, were now partners in a daring conspiracy. Jerry's resourcefulness came to the forefront. He wasn't a billionaire, but he had street smarts. He knew the city's rhythms, the blind spots in its security. He would arrange for a getaway car, a hidden route out of the city, and a safe place too. Lay low. Claire, using her intellect, would handle the inside job. She would create a diversion, find a window of opportunity amidst the chaos of the ceremony, and trust him to be there for her. It was a plan built on trust and love. The fear was palpable, but so was the exhilaration. They were no longer passive victims of their circumstances. They were taking control of their destiny. This was their one shot at overcoming the powerful forces hell-bent on keeping them apart. As they parted ways, a shared look of determination passed between them. The wedding was in 3 days, and it would not be the end of Claire Jenkins's freedom, but the beginning of their new life together. In the final days leading up to the wedding, the tycoon noticed a change in Claire. The resigned sadness he had mistaken for compliance had been replaced by a quiet, almost electric energy. There was a new light in her eyes, a subtle confidence in her posture that hadn't been there before. He was a man who understood power and control, and he could sense, with a predator's instinct, that he was losing his grip on her. His beautiful acquisition was becoming defiant. It made him deeply suspicious. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the heiress was different. She was too calm, too agreeable with the final wedding preparations. It was the calm before a storm. He had built his empire by anticipating betrayal and crushing it before it could take root. He decided to apply the same ruthless logic to his personal life. He couldn't risk the humiliation of a public plot twist on his wedding day. The forced marriage had to proceed without a single hitch. So the tycoon did what he always did when faced with a problem he couldn't solve with brute force. He threw money at it. He made a discreet call and hired the most expensive and relentless private detective in the city. The instructions were simple and chilling. Watch her every move. I want to know who she talks to, where she goes, what she does. Every text, every call. I want to know her every secret. He wanted to own her completely, not just in name, but in thought and deed. The detective was a ghost, an expert in surveillance. Suddenly, Claire's world, already a cage, shrank even further. A shadow followed her everywhere. She felt the unseen eyes on her, a constant, prickling sensation on the back of her neck. This new development sent a jolt of terror through her, threatening their plan to run away. How could they communicate? How could they finalize their escape with a professional spy documenting her every breath? The risk had just escalated exponentially. This was an unexpected and dangerous surprise. The tycoon, in his cold paranoia, was inadvertently closing every escape route she and Jerry had planned. The pressure was immense. One wrong move, one intercepted message, and not only would their dream of a life together be over, but Jerry, the poor teacher, would be exposed and vulnerable to the tycoon's full, unrestrained fury. The stakes of their love story had just become life and death. Claire had to be smarter, more careful than ever before. She was no longer just fighting against her family's expectations. She was now in a direct battle of wits with the man she was supposed to marry. She had to find a way to outsmart the detective, to send a message to Jerry, to keep their hope of overcoming this nightmare alive. Her wedding day was fast approaching, and it was now a race against time, with a hidden enemy watching her every move. The wedding day arrived, a symphony of excess and opulence. The cathedral was filled with the most powerful people in the country, a gathering of billionaires and influencers. The tycoon stood at the altar, beaming with pride and arrogance, the very picture of a man who had won. Claire Jenkins, a vision in white, walked down the aisle on her father's arm. To the world, she was the perfect billionaire heiress about to fulfill her destiny. But her heart was pounding with a different kind of purpose. She reached the altar, her eyes locking with the tycoon's possessive gaze. The officiant began the ceremony, the traditional words echoing through the cavernous space. When the time came for her to say her vows, a hush fell over the crowd. This was the moment. She took a deep breath, turned slightly to face the audience, and in a clear, unwavering voice that defied all expectation, she said, "No." A collective gasp rippled through the cathedral. This was the ultimate plot twist. Before the stunned tycoon could react, she continued, her voice filled with an emotional strength no one knew she possessed. "I cannot marry this man. For months, I have been living a lie, trapped in a forced marriage designed to merge empires, but have learned that empires of money are built on foundations of sand." She looked directly at her shocked father. "I was taught that my value was my name, my inheritance, but I was wrong. My value is in my heart." Then, she delivered the line that would echo in society pages for years. "A wonderful man, a poor teacher named Jerry Evans, taught me the meaning of true wealth. It isn't found in stock portfolios or offshore accounts. It's found in kindness, in integrity, in passion, and in courage. It's found in true love. It was a stunning public declaration, a reclamation of her own narrative. She was no longer the silent heiress, she was a woman claiming her own voice. The tycoon's face contorted into a mask of pure fury. The humiliation was absolute and public. This wasn't just a rejection, it was a repudiation of his entire worldview. She had chosen a poor teacher over him, love over money. As chaos erupted in the cathedral, Claire lifted the hem of her expensive gown and did the one thing no one expected. She began to run away, right there, from the altar. It was a moment of pure, beautiful defiance. This was her ultimate act of overcoming. In that one moment of courage, she shattered the golden cage forever. She didn't need redemption in the eyes of others, only in her own. As she ran towards the massive cathedral doors, she could hear the shouts of her fiancé and the frantic whispers of the crowd, but she didn't look back. She was running towards her future, towards the man who had shown her what it truly meant to be rich. Just as Claire burst through the heavy cathedral doors, a worn-down sedan screeched to a halt at the curb. Jerry Evans was behind the wheel, his face a mixture of terror and elation. He threw the passenger door open, and Claire, without a moment's hesitation, jumped inside, her white dress billowing around her. It was a scene straight out of a movie, the heiress in her wedding gown and the poor teacher in his everyday clothes, making their great escape. Their plan to run away was in motion, but their relief was short-lived. The furious tycoon appeared on the cathedral steps, his face purple with rage. He barked orders into a wrist communicator, and within seconds, 2 sleek black SUVs, the kind used by Secret Service agents, peeled out from a side street. His private security team was already on them. A high-stakes chase through the city streets began. This wasn't just about a jilted groom anymore, it was about a powerful man's wounded pride, and he would use all his billionaire resources to stop them. The security team was professional, relentless, and equipped with technology that Jerry's old car couldn't possibly outmatch. They communicated through earpieces, coordinating their efforts to box them in. The SUVs swerved through traffic with terrifying precision, closing the distance with alarming speed. For Claire and Jerry, the initial euphoria of their escape quickly turned into heart-pounding fear. The reality of defying a man as powerful as the tycoon was setting in. Claire looked back, her heart hammering against her ribs. The men in those cars were not just security guards, they were extensions of the tycoon's will, paid to be ruthless and efficient. She had publicly humiliated their boss, and they were tasked with bringing her back. The love story that had felt so triumphant just moments before was now a desperate flight for survival. This was the dangerous consequence of their rebellion, a direct confrontation with the power they sought to escape. The chase was an emotional roller coaster. One moment, they were filled with the hope of a new life. The next, they were gripped by the terror of capture. Jerry gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his mind racing. He knew that if they were caught, their dream of a life together would be over. The tycoon would make sure of it. He would likely lock Claire away and use his immense power to destroy Jerry in every way imaginable, ensuring this embarrassment never happened again. They were 2 ordinary people against a private army. It was a classic tale of David versus Goliath, but Goliath had GPS tracking and bulletproof vehicles. Their true love had led them to this moment of extreme peril. As the black SUVs gained on them, it seemed their audacious plan might end in failure. Their dream of overcoming their circumstances crushed under the wheels of the tycoon's immense power. Their destiny hung in the balance on the chaotic city streets. Just when it seemed like capture was inevitable, Jerry's expression shifted from fear to intense focus. This was his city. While the tycoon's men had technology, he had something better: years of lived experience. He wasn't a billionaire with a helicopter on standby, but he was a poor teacher who had navigated these streets on a bike, in a bus, and on foot every single day. He knew every shortcut, every narrow alley, every one-way street that the GPS wouldn't recommend. "Hold on," he yelled to Claire, before wrenching the wheel hard to the right. He swerved down a street that was closed for a local market, sending stalls of fruit and fabric flying. The large SUVs couldn't follow without causing massive damage and drawing unwanted police attention. It was a risky, split-second decision that bought them precious time. This was the beginning of him proving that his resourcefulness was more valuable than any amount of money the tycoon could ever possess. He didn't think like the security team. They thought in terms of highways and main arteries. Jerry thought in terms of community and chaos. He drove them through the heart of crowded, vibrant neighborhoods he knew the security team would avoid. He darted through a complex maze of back alleys behind a row of restaurants, the smell of garlic and spices filling the air. He used the city itself as his shield, its complexity and unpredictability his greatest weapon in this unlikely love story. Claire watched him, a sense of awe replacing her fear. The poor teacher she fell in love with was now a brilliant escape artist, his mind working 3 steps ahead of their pursuers. He was calm under pressure, his actions decisive and clever. He was demonstrating a kind of power the tycoon would never understand: the power of intelligence, adaptation, and intimate knowledge of one's environment. It was a thrilling, emotional realization for her. This was true love in action. Finally, in a stroke of genius, Jerry pulled into the chaotic underground parking garage of a major transit station. He drove to the lowest level, parked the car in a dark corner, and grabbed Claire's hand. "Come on," he urged. They abandoned the car and blended into the throng of commuters rushing for their trains. They were now just 2 faces in a massive crowd, their trail gone cold. The high-tech trackers on the car were now useless. This was the ultimate surprise for their pursuers. By the time the security team found the abandoned car, Claire and Jerry were miles away, sitting on a train heading towards a small, anonymous town where they could disappear. They had done it. They had escaped. Jerry's street smarts had successfully outmaneuvered the tycoon's brute force and wealth. It was a victory for the underdog, a testament to the fact that the most valuable assets a person can have are courage, cleverness, and love can't be bought. Their quest for overcoming was finally a success. The final scene of their story isn't set in a grand ballroom or a billionaire's penthouse. Instead, it's a small, cozy cottage with a little garden out front, nestled in a quiet town where nobody knows the name Jenkins. Claire, the former heiress, is wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hands covered in soil from planting roses. There are no diamonds around her neck, but there's a light in her eyes brighter than any gem. She is, for the first time in her life, profoundly and genuinely happy. Jerry Evans is there, of course. He's teaching at the local high school, where he's just as passionate and beloved as he was before. He's still a poor teacher by the world's standards, but in the life they've built, he's the richest man alive. He comes home not to a silent mansion, but to the smell of dinner cooking and the sound of Claire's laughter. Their life is simple, built on shared moments and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the life of the tycoon she left behind. Their escape was the ultimate act of overcoming. They gave up a world of immense wealth and power for something far more precious. Their fortune wasn't in a bank, it was in the quiet mornings spent drinking coffee together, the long walks they took in the countryside, and the unshakable knowledge that they had chosen each other against all odds. Their true love was the ultimate treasure, a fortune that money could never, ever buy. It was the happy ending their love story deserved. There were challenges, of course. Claire had to learn to live without the conveniences she had always taken for granted, and Jerry had to work extra hours to make ends meet. But these struggles only brought them closer, forging their bond in the fires of real life. They were a team. This journey was their redemption, Claire's redemption from a gilded cage, and Jerry's from his own crippling doubt. They had saved each other in more ways than one. Sometimes they'd see a news report about the jilted tycoon, his empire, or her family, and it would feel like watching a story about strangers from a distant land. They had truly left that world behind. Their past was no longer a haunting ghost, but a reminder of the incredible journey that led them to this peaceful existence. They had found their destiny not in a boardroom or at a society gala, but in a small house filled with love. In the end, the billionaire heiress who was supposed to enter a forced marriage found her freedom. The poor teacher who thought he could never compete discovered his own immense worth. Their story wasn't about a woman who was rescued by a man, but about two people who rescued each other and in doing so, discovered the true meaning of wealth. Their love was the final, triumphant plot twist, the greatest surprise of all, proving that the most valuable things in life are never for sale. And so the story of Claire and Jerry comes to a close. What an incredible journey, wasn't it? We went from the suffocating luxury of a billionaire's world to the heart-pounding thrill of a great escape, and finally to the profound peace of a simple life built on love. Their story is a powerful reminder that the cages we find ourselves in aren't always made of steel bars. Sometimes they're gilded in gold. It shows us that true wealth isn't what you own, but what you stand for, and that courage is the one thing that can truly set you free. We saw Claire's incredible transformation from a helpless heiress into the architect of her own destiny, and Jerry's journey from a man riddled with doubt to a hero who proved that integrity and resourcefulness are more powerful than any fortune. Their story of overcoming and redemption touches on something deep inside all of us, the desire to be loved for who we truly are, not for what we have. It's a testament to the enduring power of true love to conquer even the most impossible odds. Now we'd love to hear from you. What was the one moment in this emotional love story that impacted you the most? Was it Claire's brave stand at the altar? Or Jerry's clever escape through the city streets? Let us know in the comments below. And tell us, did you expect this ending? Or were you hoping for a different outcome? We're genuinely curious to read your thoughts on their journey and the final plot twist that led them to happiness. If their story touched your heart, please take a moment to give this video a like. It helps us more than you know. And if you want to make sure you don't miss our next story, be sure to follow the channel and hit the notification bell. We have a whole library of past videos just waiting for you, filled with tales of love, challenge, and triumph. Thank you for spending this time with us, and we can't wait to see you in the next one.